Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a legal case where the courthouse doors were, well, basically slammed shut on crucial evidence. We're going to look at the foreclosure of Jeremy Bass's home and how a single procedural rule might have decided the whole thing, no matter what the facts were. This is really a story about the tension between following the law to the letter and the spirit of justice itself. And this quote here from Professor Eleanor Winthrop, it just perfectly nails the heart of the matter. It captures the core conflict of this entire case, a huge battle between rigid, formal legal procedure and the simple search for a just, fair outcome. It's a tension that's going to define every single twist and turn of this story. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, a court's whole job is to weigh evidence. So why on earth would it refuse to even look at it? Well, the answer is buried deep in the super complex world of civil procedure. And today, we're going to untangle the very rules that shaped this entire dispute. So the real turning point came on October 21st, 2024. A critical hearing was just one day away, and the homeowner, Jeremy Bass, submitted 3 legal filings that were, frankly, explosive. But that evidence, the stuff that could have changed everything, it was never even considered by the court. Now, what's wild is that the court's decision had nothing to do with what was in the evidence. It was all about timing and procedure. See, the court ruled that Bass's filings were something called replies to replies, which is basically an extra round of arguments that the rules don't always allow. And just like that, on that technicality, the evidence was thrown out. Okay, so here's the context you absolutely need to understand. This was not a fair fight between 2 high-powered legal teams. Jeremy Bass was all on his own. He was a pro se litigant, which just means he was representing himself, trying to find his way through a legal minefield that was designed by lawyers for lawyers. And look, it wasn't because he didn't try to get help. Bass reached out to over 125 law firms, desperately trying to find someone to represent him. That number, it's not just a statistic, It's a massive red flag. It shows a systemic problem that forces regular people to go it alone against these incredibly powerful corporate opponents. The irony here is just thick. You have the presiding judge, in open court, admitting that the very rule at the center of this whole mess was, in her own words, a little convoluted. That admission makes the court's later incredibly strict enforcement of that same exact rule all the more baffling, and for Bass, all the more devastating. So, what was actually in these documents that the court refused to even look at? And let me be clear, we are not talking about some minor detail. Bears argued that these filings had bombshell evidence that went right to the very foundation of the other side's case. The first filing was a big one. Bass brought out the Sherman Antitrust Act. Think of it as a legal sledgehammer. It's designed to smash monopolies and stop the exact thing he was claiming happened here, the rigging of a public auction. Bass just laid out this trail of really damning evidence. I mean, the plaintiffs themselves admitted they talked to the auction trustee before the sale. Then you have bidders showing up with checks already printed for the exact final price, which kind of suggests the outcome was already decided, right? Bass even had emails where he'd warned the trustees about all this. He was arguing this was a clear-cut case of illegal coordination that should have made the whole sale void. Okay, so the second document was a totally different kind of attack. This one went after the plaintiff's basic legal standing. Bass argued they never actually proved they served a valid eviction notice, which is a fundamental requirement under Idaho law. Without that proof, he claimed, their entire case just falls apart. And then we get to the final piece of his argument, and this part is pretty brilliant. The other side had accused Bass of making some mistakes in his legal citations. So in his final filing, he presented a report showing that the plaintiff's own lawyers had made even more errors than he had. It was this direct response that just highlighted the insane double standard he was being held to. But here's the thing you have to realize. The court's refusal to look at those October 21st filings, it wasn't some isolated incident. It was part of a much larger pattern, a consistent refusal by the court to consider any evidence that really challenged the plaintiff's story. Just listen to this list. The court dismissed official police reports confirming Bass lived in the house. It said the pre-printed checks didn't matter. It refused to consider a pattern of similar cases involving the plaintiffs in Utah. Audio and video recordings, not good enough. Even evidence that Bass was actively trying to pay off his mortgage was called irrelevant. Every single decision was like another brick in a wall, just sealing off any chance for Bass to present his full defense. When you lay it all out on a timeline like this, the pattern becomes crystal clear.
Over almost a year, from the cops verifying his residency all the way to the court refusing to look at the Utah cases, the court consistently chose procedure over substance, all leading up to that final decision to formally exclude the October 21st filings.
So let's talk about what was really at stake here, because this legal fight wasn't just about some abstract principles. The court's decisions had a very real and, frankly, devastating financial impact. This whole fight over procedure was really a fight for almost $142,000 in home equity. That's the staggering difference between what the property was actually worth and the price it was sold for at that contested auction. We're talking about a life-altering amount of money. And this chart just makes it so visually obvious. You can see the assessed value was over $300,000. Now look at the auction price, just over $165,000. That is a massive gap. Bass was arguing that a fair auction, the kind his excluded evidence was trying to prove didn't happen, would have closed that gap significantly. And these procedural rulings, they just set off this domino effect of terrible consequences. With his evidence shut out, the court ruled against Bass. His entire defense was labeled frivolous, and then he was ordered to pay the other side's legal fees. And the final blow, of course, was being evicted from his home. So now this entire conflict, the excluded evidence, the procedural rulings, the huge financial consequences, it's all sitting in front of the Idaho Supreme Court. In a way, this appeal is putting the very purpose of legal procedure itself on trial. It really boils down to this fundamental tension. On one side, you've got procedural formality, the rules that are supposed to keep the legal system neat and orderly. On the other side, you have substantive justice, the idea that cases should be decided on facts and truth. The appeal is asking a really basic question. When these two things collide, which one should win? Whatever the Idaho Supreme Court decides here, it's going to send ripples far beyond just this one case. It's going to help define the role of rules in our entire legal system. And it leaves all of us with this final, really provocative question. Are these procedural rules supposed to be a gateway that makes sure everyone gets a fair shot? Or can they become a gatekeeper that locks the courthouse doors before the truth can even be heard?